गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू दिस चैनल। स्वागत है आप इस चैनल पर सुनने आए। आप इस चैनल पर जो सुनने आए हैं, आज हम बात करने जा रहे हैं एक बहुत ही ज़रूरी कहानी की। वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट एन इम्पॉर्टेंट एपिसोड फ्रॉम द epic and from the time of the past. As you already know कि this is an episode of a chapter of history. Okay, so we'll be discussing a part an important tale from the epic Mahabharat, and we'll be coming to know about the type of talks there that were there between the warriors. Will come to know about what principles, what motives, and what passions, and you can say what type of beliefs or practices were there in the time of those people. For example, in the case of Yudhishthir and the other Pandavas or even the Kauravas, what the strategies they were using to build an empire and to establish good relationships with the other people in their clan or their family or whatever, wherever they might be living. Okay, as you already know, that there was a struggle for power even in the past, and in the coming decades also. After the time of the Mahabharat war, there were struggles for power. Okay, so number of warriors were there, and they all had different motives and different likings. Okay, why they were fighting, so they had different reasons for that. But the most important thing which comes here is that there were certain principles, and sometimes the warriors were following those principles and sometimes they were not following those principles. Okay, so what happens here is that the king, Dhritarashtra, is also displayed as a person who favored his son more than the sons of his own brother. Okay, his own son he favored him more than the sons of his brother. Okay, and on the other hand we have the Pandavas, who are very pious and you can say very honest ones. Okay, the important thing is that the diplomatic relations and the diplomatic attitude, or you can say how cleverly the diplomat, as a diplomat, Shakuni was staying in the palace of Hastinapur, and he just makes sure that Duryodhan is getting all the privileges. Okay, so that is another important thing. And from the important documents about the Mahabharat, we come to know about the beliefs and the practices which were prevalent at that time. Okay, that the son will inherit the property of the father. Another important thing was that people were very strict about their norms, their rules, and their discipline. Okay, and then another important aspect was that ki in the even in the wars there were certain rules. Okay, which were followed by the people sometimes, and when they were violated, the other side was also angered by it, and they would also violate certain other rules. Okay, in the coming time period. Okay, in the future, they had many times the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they had violated the certain rules of the war. Okay, and but what is the important thing is that they kept their conflict or their battles within their family, and they did not just show an opposition when their fight was with the other clans or the ruling families. For example, when Duryodhan was caught by other enemies. Okay, so at that time Yudhishthir helped Duryodhan. Okay, so that shows ki he had a different opinion that he'll be helping his fellows in the case of a foreign enemy. Okay, so that is another thing. And another important thing is that it has more than 1 lakh verses. So it indicates that the people who have written, at least it tells about the mentality of those people, the sages or the writers, the future writers who took it as an inspiration and who wrote again about that same subject. It tells about their beliefs, their practices, and their own mentality, that what type of a mentality they were having. Okay, so it is somehow totally related with how traditions and how over generations the principles and the beliefs are evolving. It tells everything about it. Okay, and on the other hand it also tells us that the people, they were very just, they were very justice liking people. They were always calm and very devoted to their work. It also tells us all this. Okay. And each one of them were gifted, and they were not they were not shaking, or they were not moved, they could not be moved by any type of greed, or you can say any type of, you can say, wants, in the any type of thing which would distract them from their actual motives. Okay, so they were very clear about their motives, be it Shakuni, Duryodhan, and the other Kauravas, or even the Pandavas, Arjun, Bhim, Sen, Sahadev, Nakul, Yudhishthir. They all were very defined, they all had very defined motives. Okay. And even it also tells us that, how over decades they were keeping their things, their passions, and their motives or their dreams alive. Okay, even in the Vanvas, and even at the times when they were demotivated by the other ruling classes, and even at that time also they were keeping their revenge, or you can say they were keeping their uh, memories totally alive and refresh. And when the time came, and when the war occurred, the Mahabharat war occurred, then they had just fought the war with all the courage they had, be it the Pandavas or be it the Kauravas. They had fought the war with all the courage and the power they were having. Okay, so it tells us all these things. And many times the strangers, they turn out to be relatives. Many times the family people, they become strange, they become more strange than the strangers themselves. Okay, so that is. And many times it has been shown that the mighty people, mighty ruling classes, they try to weaken the lower sections of the society. And many times the weak people, even they courageously fight the mighty people. So it shows their strength, that there was a striving for justice. It shows this all. Okay. And what else I will tell, that that people they were having, you can say, it also tells us that the problems which the common people were having, they are not given a mention in any of these documents, in any of these stories. Okay, so it also tells us that there was a dominant ruling class. Okay. And what else if we talk about it, is was that they also used to give a shelter to those people who came to them out of pity, out of you can say kindness, out of their kindness. If they gave shelter to anyone, then they would ensure that no warrior or no enemy would harm that person. So it is also a part of their nature, that they were like this. So it is all about the warriors at that time. Okay, at the time of the epic. Okay, be it any epic of the Indian origin, or the belonging to the Indians. So it is all about that part of history. And here all this lecture, all this important detail, it finishes. And one thing more, another one thing is that key these people, they what they did was that they sometimes what happened was that they were having total knowledge. Even they were having the total knowledge about how this what type of strategy they will use for a specific warrior. For example, in the case of Yudhishthir, they knew that he was very pious and justice liking king, and he was very pleasant in his manners. Okay, so this was his characteristic. So they had knowledge about every single person. Okay, the Kauravas had knowledge about the Pandavas, and the Pandavas knew the weakness of Kauravas also. So they were knowing the weakness of their enemy. This shows that they knew a strong strategy. That first they used to know the weakness of their enemies. Okay, Okay. And they when they, once they will know the for knowing the weakness of their enemy, they made their enemies their friends, and when they came to know the weakness, then they would turn out to be their enemy. Okay. So they were knowing their weakness of their enemies. Okay. Even about the strength of, but the strength also they knew that strength was that uh, Yudhishthir was very pious one, and Bhim was very powerful, Arjun was a great archer. Okay, archer he was, and Nakul and Sahdev also had their special capabilities. So those were all the things. And here the lecture it finishes. Thank you.